Welcome to the Microdose Diet podcast, and we're going to explore even more options for success, joy, and personal transformation because today I have an amazing guest. I always have amazing guests, but Diana is extra special. So Diana Mandell, she's a transformational coach. She's a relationship and dating expert. I know a lot of you are interested in that space. She's a speaker, she's an author, she's plenty of things. So she has helped countless, literally countless individuals break through personal limitations. And so she's going to explain us her secret sauce and what you can learn from her. So, Diana, thank you so much for being here with us today. How are you doing?
I'm great. Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
I'm super excited to have you. So I'm going to start slow, and you can increase the temperature whenever you want. So let's talk about intentional growth and healing, because I think in the type of work we do, intention is really super important. So you've helped tons of clients transform their lives. How do you guide them to set intentions that really align with their deepest goals, but also their authentic selves?
So it's difficult because we don't sit and think about these things. We think we know what we want out of life, out of a partner, out of our business, whatever it may be, but we don't sit and actually think about it, right?
Mm-hmm.
We don't.
Absolutely.
So we don't really know what we want. And we just end up saying some arbitrary, sort of nice sounding things, but we don't know what it means. So, for example, if you're looking for a partner who is kind, what does that mean?
Mm-hmm.
Who's romantic? What does that mean? Who's intelligent? Because your version, it could be very different from mine. So it's not about right or wrong. We all generally want the same things, but in what level of importance, for one, and also what does that mean? So what I call is the traits behind the traits.
Mm-hmm.
So like, what does that mean? What are you looking for? And the same thing with your own life. I'm looking for success. I have no idea what that means,
Mm-hmm.
but they don't either, which is why we say, again, these very broad terms. And, it just all sounds very ethereal because it is, because we haven't taken the time to break down what it all means. It's like me saying, Peggy, I want a car. And you're like, awesome. Where are we going? And I'm like, I don't know. Well, what color? I don't know. Do you want an SUV? Do you want a sedan? I have no idea. I mean, right? Like you don't know where you're going. You don't know what you're doing. You're never going to know if you find it. So we're just kind of walking around aimlessly looking for something, but
Mm-hmm.
we don't really know what. So how do you hold yourself accountable? How do you have boundaries? How do you do anything intentionally when you don't know what exactly you're doing, what you're looking for, what makes you happy, both from yourself, but then also a partner, friendships, from your family? So, right, just every kind of relationship we have, if you really have no idea and it's not defined, you're just kind of walking around lost.
I love that because, you can see, your example. I want someone who's kind. Okay, what does it mean, kind? Does it mean that when you come back from work, he asks you 25 questions, or kind for you, he leaves you space? It's two different sort of kinds and very different behaviors. So thank you for really connecting the dots. I think for me, it will ring a bell. So I'm sure it will ring a bell for many people. The second part is really about authenticity, because what I find with myself, with my clients, is that we have so much conditioning and programming is that we think that what we want is what we want, when actually it's what my mothers want. So how do you address that?
It's true. It's what we think other people would say, yay, and clap for us versus what actually works for us. I'm a lawyer. Why? Because my dad was,
Hmm.
because that's what my mom told me that I should be, right? It's so much about not only just what the labels are, the roles we were given, the things we were told when we're young repeatedly of, like, you're really good at this, so you should really do that. And it plants those seeds. But then also, too, a very similar thing is that we are often told something when we're young. It's what I call like a mantra or a belief
Yeah.
by someone of authority often. So we're expected to just trust what they say and take it in. And because we're so young, we have no filter otherwise. So it could be a parent, a teacher, a coach, a mentor, whatever it may be, but someone of authority, and they say something that's probably projection of themselves, something not nice, not helpful, very limiting. And then we look through the lens of that idea or thought of ourselves for the rest of our lives. And we look for
Mm-hmm.
proof that that's true. And we'll even deviate. We will alter reality to make that fit, that
Yeah.
puzzle piece
Mm-hmm.
fit. We'll do whatever delusional thing we have to just continue that and perpetuate that idea of ourselves, even if it's really unhelpful, but we'll continue. And we have no idea that we're even doing it because it was something that happened when we're 7.
Yeah.
So call you, 47. Now that's 40 years of programming. It's very difficult. You think like, I know myself, I'm good. Like I
Yeah.
know my strengths, my weaknesses.
Yeah.
We know some of them, but we don't know all of them. So when you don't know, and how do you improve something that you don't even know actually exists? So a lot of the choices that we make, the things that we attract, things we say yes to and no to have very much to do with our history. And if you just look backward and rewind the tape, it's like this leads to this, leads to, it all just makes sense in a line, right? Just start from the beginning and just keep going. The way to live differently is to break that pattern and to
Mm-hmm.
think about, and it sounds like oddly simplistic and almost stupid sounding, but what do you want? It's like, no, 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 keep going. But I want, no, 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 right? Because it's the same thing. We think we know, but we don't because we never gave ourselves that autonomy and that time and that flexibility
Yeah.
to be ourselves. And frankly, kind of like we were talking before we started recording, I think I struggled a lot in business, especially being outward, like inward, I was sort of the best kept secret for a long time. I just was afraid to be myself. I wasn't
Mm-hmm.
sure how that was going to come across because I'm not that sort of quintessential sort of flatline, type of therapist that's just,
Yeah.
oh yes, that is, thank you. That is very helpful for me. Like that's just not me. I'm a New Yorker. I curse, like I'm real. I'm like,
Yeah.
let's get to the fucking point. Let's get you help. Let's get you out of this pain. And I kept working with different teams and different people that would tell me what to do. And I'm like, this doesn't fit for me. This doesn't feel
Mm-hmm.
right.
Mm-hmm.
This is just, it's like, but oh, it'll make you a lot of money. I don't care.
Yeah.
Like if it's just not going to work or it doesn't align, it doesn't fit, it's something just doesn't, it's like funky for
Yeah.
me.
Yeah.
It just never felt right. So when I started to just give myself the room and the permission to just explore and do and be me, especially with what I do for a living, like I talk about penises and vaginas, right? So like
Yeah.
I'm TMI all over the place. It is weird. And I have to share more of my own experiences and be out
Yeah.
there more. If I'm making and asking other people to do the same, I need to do it. So it's scary, but it's the best way
Uh,
to live.
so, and that brings me to something I'm very interested. So, what are some of the common barriers that you see in people to actually show up, with authenticity, especially in their relationships?
And you're asking what's the blockage? Like
Yeah,
what stops you?
do you see are the common barriers? Is there
Sure.
like the top three barriers that you see in pretty much everyone that stop us? I don't know, we're afraid of showing vulnerability or what do you see?
It's interesting because I was thinking about this recently. It all boils down to insecurity. It's
Mm,
actually one
mhm,
thing.
mhm.
And yeah, there's fear and there's other things that sort of grow and
But
build
yeah.
from that. But the main crux of it all is insecurity, and we all have it. And the interesting thing is that the different personality types that you see out there, you think, well, this person's really confident. If you see someone who's like an egotist or,
Yeah.
someone who has an inflated ego, that's extreme insecurity.
Yeah.
If you see someone who's a people pleaser, insecurity, an overthinker, insecurity, a victim, insecure, right? Like it's all comes from insecurity. We all have it. We all just mask it in different ways
Different
and try
ways.
to
Yeah.
hide it in different ways. And like I always say, if you took the time that you take to hide and try to fake certain things in actually working on it and going to the places
Yeah.
that we don't
Hmm.
necessarily want to go, you wouldn't have to do that all the time. And then
Yeah.
so often because so many people are faking it, you look and you're like, well, I mean, what's wrong with me?
Well, and that's
Right?
the
Like,
thing.
or you think everyone else has this like beautiful,
Yeah.
perfect life. And then, you look at and you're looking around and you're like, well, what happened to me? So you feel a lot of shame and a lot of
Yeah.
guilt and you internalize that, and that creates a lot of problems. But most people, like you see on TV and on social media, they're filtering the best part of their lives. They're doing it intentionally because they're insecure and
Yeah.
want you to see all that. When you start to drop that mask and the concern of being authentic versus the concern of being liked.
Hmm.
When you're
Hmm.
able to divide those two things and know that there will be people when you're authentic that will not like you, and there are going to be
Yeah.
people that are going to be obsessed with you, but I'd rather die knowing that I was me versus a version of me that I thought people would love the most. And we
Yeah.
fake it because as a defense mechanism, because if you and I are dating and I don't show you exactly who I am, I show you like bits and pieces
Yeah.
purposefully. It's kind of like part conscious, part subconscious, actually. And then after, let's say, a month of dating, you say to me, you know what, Diana, I just don't think we're a good fit. My defense immediately comes in and I say, great. And she never really saw me anyway. So it's fine,
Yeah.
right?
Hmm.
You never saw me.
Hmm. Yeah.
I saw, I gave you like bits and pieces of me.
Yeah.
I never showed you who I actually am versus I show you everything that I am, more or less, within a
And
month's time, let's
and now you
say.
don't like me.
Fast
Yeah.
forward the month,
Yeah.
right? Fast forward the month. And you say to me, unfortunately, Dan, I'm not interested. It's not a great fit. I don't have anything. I have to
Yeah.
literally sit here and think to myself, wow, like Peggy didn't like me for me.
Hmm.
Though, if the roles are reversed, how often do we just not like people, even as a friendship, right? There's just
Yeah.
certain people that you don't vibe with for whatever reason. It doesn't even matter why. So even though that's going to happen, we want to be the ones to be in control where everyone likes us because we just want to have self-preservation and
Yeah.
just, feel included and involved and know that we're liked by everyone. It's
Mm.
not going to happen. And the
Yeah.
more that you become successful in whatever you do, the more haters you're going to get.
Exactly.
You should like that is what the goal is actually is to get those haters. And that is
Yeah.
just fuel to keep going. It means you're on the right path when, people start to chatter. I had very little of it. Then as I started to ramp up, I got more and more of it. And I was like, wow, because people are
Yeah.
nasty.
Yeah.
But it says a lot more about them than
Yeah.
it says about you. And I love the, keyboard warriors who love to get brave, behind the screen, but because you're doing something that they don't have the balls, let's say,
Yeah.
to do, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So a lot of it all comes down to insecurity.
So I really like how you frame it, the insecurity. And as you were talking, it made me think about my relationship with my mother, where I basically had to fake a lot to not be rejected. And I became a different version of myself, a version that was acceptable for her versus the authentic that was not. So is it where you see most people, stands where basically they had to hide who they were starting at age 1 day or 2 days to become different, to be accepted? Yeah. Hmm.
Yes, because unfortunately, as parents, we do the best that we can, but we fuck up our kids. We just do. And I
Yeah.
have two very young kids, and I think about it a lot, but we screw up our kids and we don't accept them fully. We accept
Hmm.
certain parts of them,
Hmm.
but
Hmm.
because we haven't done the work on ourselves, when you see a child, especially a woman to a daughter,
Yeah.
where you guys are the same sex, like you see yourself
Exactly. Yeah.
in the younger version of you, whatever you haven't healed comes out. And because she didn't feel good about herself in certain ways, she now needs to act that out on you. And because when we're young, we don't have the ability or the emotional maturity to be able to differentiate, like, oh, this is my mom's projection, or this is my
Yeah. Yes.
mom's
Exactly.
lack
Yeah.
of healing. Like, we wouldn't know those things.
Yeah.
We internalize it and think there was something bad or wrong about us, that we are not accepted for exactly who we are. So we learn to hide those parts
Hmm.
that our parents, let's say our moms, doesn't matter who, but that our caregivers, let's call it that,
Yeah.
don't accept or don't like about us. And that becomes basically like a micro tear,
Hmm.
on your heart. And the more that those arise and the more those come, the more those tears that exist, to the point at which you become so good at filtering certain parts of yourself, depending on
Yeah.
the audience, that you lose who you are
Exactly.
because you don't really
Hmm.
know anymore, right? Like there were
Exactly.
certain parts of yourself that they died off
Hmm.
because you asked them to, because it just didn't feel good anymore.
Hmm.
So to be an adult and want those things back, I mean, there's nowhere to even go.
Yeah.
They never really existed. So one of the things that I have my clients do is to do mirror work as a little girl or
Ah,
little boy around 6 years old. It's very sort of nerdy scientific, but that's essentially when we start to learn about the world and our identities and our roles and just, what it all looks like. We revisit, we go back to that time period. You look at yourself in the mirror. So it can be very intense.
yeah.
Do this
Hmm.
at night because, again, you don't want to do all that and just go to work, and think of exactly what you looked like at that time. And
Hmm.
sometimes it feels like you should know exactly, but go look at pictures,
Yeah.
if you need to
Hmm.
know exactly what you looked like. And you got to heal that little girl or little boy. You got to give them everything and never received them when they were little, the validation, the love, the acceptance, the hope, and just being enough as you are because we are. Like I see
Yeah.
my daughter and my son, 3 and 1.5, and it's like such a beautiful innocence that my kids have where they
Mhm.
they think they're like fucking awesome for doing the
Yes.
stupidest shit.
Yeah.
Right. But it's like, oh, like, and I think to myself, like, wow, like it's so amazing to see that. But then it's also so sad to see people in like their 20s, 30s, 40s, et cetera, where all of that's taken, right? Like
Mhm.
you're born thinking like you're fucking adorable and cute and just the best and
Yeah.
and that life is awesome. And then people teach you, no, 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 you're
Yeah.
not that great. No, life is not that great. No, no, love is scary. No. And that's when we start to build and grow whatever our identity is, what we believe about things. And again, that's the lens that you look from. And we're
Mm.
just shocked at why we are so unhappy, so lonely.
Yeah. Mhm.
We hate ourselves. We don't like our bodies. We don't like what we do for a living. We're scared of success, but we're scared of failure.
Yeah.
It's just a mess. But you
Yeah.
wonder why? Like, that's exactly why. There you go.
So let's transition into self-worth. I think that's a good
Yeah.
place to go. So how do you work with clients? You mentioned this mirror work, which I assume is also rebuilding their self-worth, meaning you're great for who you are, not what you do, kind of.
Yeah.
So do you have any advice? So you have a mirror work. What other advice maybe would you have for people listening and thinking, "Oh, I need a self-worth boost"?
Listen, in terms of going back to how it started or, we don't want to go down the rabbit hole of too much of
Mm-hmm.
that. We want to
Mm-hmm.
deal with now and where we are now. And a lot of it is the reframing and redirecting. It's the thoughts that we have in our mind, and we're so unaware of what they are.
Mm-hmm.
And the way that I explain it, it's a little odd maybe, but I explain it like, and this is where self-awareness comes into play because we're terrible at it. It's imagine a little bird sitting on your shoulder and just observing. So we're not criticizing, we're not judging ourselves. It's completely not what we're trying to do. You just want to observe what your thoughts and beliefs are. It's like that little tape that plays in your head when you look past the mirror. What are you saying to yourself?
Mm-hmm.
Right? If something didn't necessarily go your way, and it could be something small,
Yeah.
what are you saying to yourself? When I did this work, it was from like a very rock bottom moment. And I figured just like everyone else, self-love, I need to learn to love myself, but I really needed to learn to like myself because when I
Mm-hmm.
did this exercise and I literally like envisioned it like a bird myself and just sort of sat on my shoulder for a couple of days. And again, as non-judgmental as I possibly could,
Yeah.
just to kind of critique and see and explore. And I was an asshole to myself.
Yeah.
I mean, that woman would never be, a happy person. But another thing that I say that's a good distinction. So first do that, right? Just for the
Yeah.
self-awareness piece of it.
Yeah.
Very like interesting and sort of sad in a sense, but it gives you a lot of room to grow.
Yeah.
But another thing that you can do is what I call the friend meter, where I put a test in place and I still do this. I'm always like, am I being the 2.0 version of myself? So that's one question to ask yourself a lot and be really honest.
Mm-hmm.
But I always ask myself something and giving myself advice because I like to try to do that for myself first before running to someone else, for advice on things because I used to do that. So there's empowerment in that. But the advice and the thoughts that we give ourselves are very different from other people that we care about. For example, let's say I lost my job. I call you and I'm obviously unhappy. And I say, oh my God, Peggy, I lost my job. Of course, you would say, like, I'm so sorry that happened. Let me help you. Let's put your resume together. You're going
Yeah.
to be fine. We're going to figure this out. If it were yourself, right? And let's just say, God forbid, like your boss
Yeah.
fires you. What are you thinking? I'm a
Yeah.
loser. How could this fucking happen to me? I'm never going to get back, on path. How embarrassing. What am I going to say to people? So how is it that with yourself, same exact situation, you would say one thing pretty nasty versus a friend where you'd be empathetic and
Mm-hmm.
kind and
Mm-hmm.
patient and
Mm-hmm.
motivating? So why does it seem like it's a total disconnect there? So a lot of it comes from the thoughts that you're having. Yes, you can do deep work, right, around your trauma. And I always say to do that. That's not going to be obviously a quick action step per se, but doing these little hacks and these little
Yeah.
tweaks
Mm-hmm.
is makes such a huge difference, even to just uncover almost like how bad it is. Because
Yeah.
when I was able to see how nasty I was to myself, not only was I just sad, but it gave me something to go off of and start to change my language intentionally and purposefully. For example, if I would drop something on the floor or trip or whatever,
Yeah.
the automatic thing I would say is, I'm stupid.
Yeah.
The problem with that is that your brain files this away. It doesn't differentiate, oh, I just made a mistake. I was being dramatic. Like, it's fine.
Yeah.
It doesn't know to do that. It's not that
Mhm,
logical.
mhm,
So
mhm,
it
mhm.
just takes that, files it away, and puts it in that. So anytime I made a mistake or did something silly or whatever it is, instead of saying I'm silly, which is generally what I say now, it was I'm stupid, and it
Sure.
just files away and files away and files away and right. It just amplifies. And like you
Mhm.
said, then you just look for proof that all those things that you're saying about yourself is true. So the
Yeah.
way that I felt about myself when I look in front of the mirror, I was like, oh, don't like that. Oh, don't like that.
Yeah.
And I forced myself when I would pass by a mirror of any kind, I had to say three nice things about myself, even if it felt like I was so uncomfortable. It was like as if I was constipated. I made myself say something positive and three things, not just one thing. And I'd be like, I know I can find it. And it started to become more like, it's not a lie. I just wanted to look for the good first before I looked at the bad, because that's
Mhm,
what I was so used to doing. It's almost like a defense mechanism where if I identify it first before someone else does,
mhm.
it doesn't seem so painful.
Yeah.
So I'm like, okay, so where does that come from? And again, you don't want to dissect every single thing you do and go to the past for
Yeah.
every single thing. And obviously, as a therapist, it's a little bit easier to do that. And obviously, some things you'll find connections to, and some things you won't. But it is as simple as just learning what language you're speaking to
Mhm,
yourself
mhm,
and
mhm.
looking at what needs to change and what you need to enhance. There are probably some good things that you're doing too,
Yeah.
but constantly, I mean, even if something good happened to me, like if I got, a nice piece of press or had a great interview or a client says something really nice, I would either say nothing or possibly pass along to like my husband or, my mother or a friend of mine, but I never looked at it. I never
Mhm.
gave myself a moment to just be like, that was fucking awesome.
Yeah.
Just a moment.
Mhm.
I'm not saying you need a parade and you need to just, go crazy. Um,
Uh,
but there were certain moments that I had that I just didn't allow myself to feel good about it. And probably because I was afraid to become cocky, because like who
mhm.
likes people like that? But I noticed that when I just give myself a moment and I'm just like, yes, Mandel, and I give myself that moment. And then if I want to share it with someone else, that's fine. Just like when I say, I need to think through like, how do I really feel about this? Or, let me just sort of think through what happened here before I give it to someone else. I want to feel that first.
Mhm,
I want
mhm.
that empowerment. So it sounds a little silly, but I'll say that becoming your own best friend and
Yeah.
being very selective and careful on what you're saying, what you're doing, that becomes your reality. That was a big shift for me, but you have to be very accountable to yourself and saying, up, you know what I mean? Like, I'm not being the 2.0 me right
Yeah.
now. So
Yeah.
you also have to hold yourself accountable and not be a jerk and say, like, look at you, you screwed up again. No,
Yeah.
no, we're not doing that. It's just like, oops, and you just got to like veer back, on course and just continue going.
I love it. Very, very helpful. So, one thing I want to talk about is obviously relationships and having more intentional relationships into our lives. So, as I got older, I realized that I have a lot of people around me, but they're not necessarily people I picked. Can be someone I've known for 5 years because we work together. They were my neighbors. We played tennis, whatever. And then you're looking at that and you're like, okay, every Monday I'm seeing that person. It's not really intentional. Do I really like them? Is it my version 2.0 of myself with their version 2.0? So, what are some, practical ways listeners, me, can begin to form maybe deeper, more intentional relationship versus these de facto people we have in our lives?
So a lot of people become friends with or connect with people out of convenience,
Absolutely.
right? Which is exactly what you said. So it could be, I'm a mom and so are you. So I guess we're friends, right? Or my kid's on a softball team, your kid's on a softball team, here we go. And that's okay for a certain amount of time. Like there's
Yeah.
nothing wrong with that. But you want to carve out time to see what are the key things that matter to you right now.
hmm
Is it business? Is it self-development? Is it, losing weight? Is it your animals? I mean, what is it that you like to do? And it can be multiple things.
Yeah.
But what's important to you? What do you like to do? And find people that you at least have something in common with who also love self-development or business or the
hmm
pets or, or losing weight or whatever, but you have
Yeah.
some commonality or love beauty or love sports, whatever it is, and find people in your community. And obviously you can do it, from your computer as well, but it's nicer in some sense to have some people face to face that you can meet with. And some people you'll gel with, and some people you won't. And obviously, you can always be kind to people, but it's really about finding people that in the season that you're in right now, right? Like whatever is really important to you, whatever is top of mind, and finding people like that. And there's ways to do it. It becomes a little bit harder when it's not just, you're opening the floodgates to anyone, where it is more specific that way, but it's a lot more targeted. And like I said, it's really easy to start a conversation with someone when you're both there for some intention. Oh, you're losing weight also? That's awesome. How much, how long have you been struggling? How long have you been doing this? What are you doing? What's working? What's not working? And just having, then you have an accountability buddy, potentially someone that you have this in common with, because oftentimes we feel very isolated with people around us because they're not necessarily on the same exact track as us. And it's not right or wrong. It's just welcome to life, where certain things are important to you. There are certain focuses. So it's very much about finding people that you just gel with. And there's just some connection. There's something special there. And again, it's unfortunately a little bit more rare. So you'll have to do a little bit more digging and also know, what your boundaries are and figure out what you look for in a friend. And there's kind of the same type of idea like we were talking about before with an actual romantic relationship, the traits behind the traits. What makes you a good friend? What are you looking for in a friend? But what does that mean? Like we said, kindness or patience or reliability or loyalty, or like what all those things mean to you, and what's your barrier and what's your line for that, and making sure that you're very clear on that so that whether someone is, keeping to what you said you wanted or not, and being kind about it. But some people you'll keep and some people you won't. But it does have to be intentional, like you said. Some people it's by default, and that's great and that can work. But I think we so often keep people in our lives and make excuses, or they were a childhood friend, they've been in my life forever, and maybe they're kind of toxic, but we do have that history that doesn't justify keeping someone in your life that just shouldn't be there. Right. And the same thing with family. We don't pick our family, but in some ways you do. Right. I mean, if your own family sort of stinks, then your friends become your family, and you can veer away from certain people that just don't serve you, aren't lifting you up, don't want to see good for you necessarily, because we don't pick and choose our family, right? Like our origin family. But your friends can kind of fill in there. And I found that too, as different seasons of my life, as I became a business owner, it was like, okay, I need to find business owner friends. As I became a mom, it's like, okay, I need to find some mom friends, so I'm able to diversify and talk about different things with different people. I don't want to just talk about being a mom all the time, or just business all the time, or just my hobbies, or whatever it may be. So I like to vary up people that know me in different parts of my life and that have known me in different time periods, let's say. And it's just a nice thing. And some people are going to be, a best friend, and some people are going to be kind of more on like the outer bands. They're just, nice friends or social friends. But a nice hack that I'll give is write down, it sounds a little strange, but write down a list of all of your friends and write down what their strengths are. And not necessarily their weaknesses, because their strengths, it kind of makes it clear what their strengths are. And only ask those people what those strengths are. So if my strength is not to hype you up, don't talk to me when you're feeling bad. Right? Because let's say I'm a Debbie Downer, or I'm going through something too, like I'm just going to bring your ass down. Not the right person, right? And what we do is, it's not what you're asking for that's wrong. We ask the wrong people and then continuously get disappointed because of who we're asking. When you know what the strengths are of the people around you, I'm not feeling good, this person's hysterical, I'm calling them, or like I really need to see someone right now who's really reliable. Okay, calling them. We're not good at that. Again, we don't sit and assess these things. We don't know what we're doing, right? So we just kind of have people, like I said, out of convenience, like we both said. Now you can be intentional about it and know what you're looking for and why, and who's in your life, and frankly, what's missing from that list.
I love it. Thank you so much, Diana. So I'm sure everyone who's been listening is like, okay, I want more of that woman. She is like an oracle. So where can they find you?
Probably where I'm most active is Instagram. So it's Diana Mandell.
Diana Mandell. Okay. You have a website, obviously.
I do. Also Diana Mandell. So it's anything Diana Mandell.
Anything Diana
You will
Mandell.
find me, come hang out, come learn, grow. I love it.
Well, thank you so, so much. One last word, maybe you want to share with our listener.
Heal your wounds. and I know people say it all the time, so I kind of even roll my eyes when I say it myself, but we don't know who we are. We don't know what our Achilles heel is. What are the things that are bringing us down without us even realizing it? We have to do the work. We don't know what other people think of us, but it does matter. We don't know what we're doing. Like we said, I mean, there's just a lot of work that needs to be done. So please, please, please find someone who you trust, who you think is really good, and let them get you to that next level.
I love that. Thank you so, so much, Diana. Again, Diana Mandell. You can find her on Instagram, her website, all things Diana Mandell. Thank you so much for your time and your insight. It was amazing.
Thank you. And thank you for having me.
Thank you. Have a fantastic day.
You too.